Welcome, Paul.
Welcome, yes. Hello, welcome everyone. I know Michael Robinson. Are you guys able to see the room? The guys online? So yeah, if not, we can count, but the room is almost full.
Can turn around the camera, but somehow the camera is
covered by the board.
Oh, we need to throw away the board from the window.
Yeah, damn it.
Let's wait.
Yeah, so starts being dangerous, but the great thing is that I've never seen such a full room on Lineage Meetup. So it's just Lineage, it's governance. No one's interested in governance that much. At least that I thought that was what I was thinking about. So yeah, thank you for coming and for spending a couple of minutes with me on updates on the Spark integration. I'm Paweł. You can find me on GitHub as Paweł Leszczyński, and yeah, I'm software engineer at Getting Data, and I'm super happy to be able to work for like more than 2 years full time in open source. And yeah, thank you for Getting Data for letting me to do so. On the bottom left, you can see the full OpenLineage squad, the pirates, and 2 of them you can find in this room if you want to. Yeah, and of course, Big Lebowski is my favorite movie, so if you want to, you can watch it whenever you want. The agenda for this talk is like 3 months of improvements in Spark integration that happened recently, some big issues that we see ahead of us, and yeah, trying to answer the question, where do we want to go? And of course, feel free to interrupt and ask questions, and if we don't make it with the slides, I'll be even more happy if we had discussion like this. But yeah, this time I will perhaps give microphone to Kuba, and Kuba can handle it and give it to guys talking. So we started the quarter with PR 2103, and within OpenLineage 1.0 we released in our documentation the lifecycle state change graph, which is super shiny. And the assumption here is that we allow a single start event for a run and a single complete abort or fail event. So the start and termination events can only occur once. And it turned out that we do have a duplicate events, especially for some case within Spark SQL. And we still send duplicate events because the events are cumulative, and I believe there's nothing wrong with this, except for column level lineage that Jens mentioned before. But we make sure that the start is sent once and the other event is marked as running. The other interesting PR was to unify the dataset naming within Flink and Spark. I'm not sure if you are aware of this, but I think that streaming job support and within Lineage ecosystem will be a pretty hot topic in the next months. And the first step to make it happen was to unify the Flink and Spark names, the data sets, because we do have a pretty big user that use OpenLineage integration for both Spark World and Flink World. And that's the beauty of the cross-platform Lineage, that you can see the lineage graph and dependencies between data sets, regardless of technology you use. And yeah, so we moved some logic to classes that are shared among Flink and Spark. We included more Databricks tests. So the integration tests that are run on the Databricks runtime. Actually, in Databricks, it happens oftentimes that we emitted the events that didn't bring any value at all, and they were related to something you click in the UI, like the show namespace, collect limit, and we filtered them. Yeah, in general, I think that within Databricks runtime, we don't want to generate and send the events from actions that do not contain output data sets. It's a big assumption, perhaps can be wrong in some cases, but most often it is like this. If you don't have any output data set, then within the job, then you shouldn't generate events out of it. Support for Spark 3.5. This was easy to be added. At the moment, we didn't have proper versions of Iceberg and Delta. I'm not sure if we added it. I think it has to be upgraded. So the latest Iceberg and Delta versions for Spark 3.5 need to be supported. But the good thing was that our integration tests were passing just when bumping the Spark version. And within CI, we check multiple Spark versions, some recent ones to verify if things are still working. We included support for Databricks Runtime 13.3, and it's always interesting to work with proprietary code that you cannot see and you just see that something goes wrong. We get info from users that it's not working and they're experiencing some no such method exception. And it turned out that although this version of the runtime claims it's using Spark 3.4, I think it's using the Catalyst classes from Spark 3.5. And we can solve such problems, but we can only solve them after they occur currently. So which actually this is for the new Databricks runtimes. But there are some corner cases and issues that we need to take care of to make sure it is working. Another recent improvement is being able to add the Scala integration test. So I spent a long time this summer tackling with this issue, and the user was pretty sure he's able to reproduce the issue, and he published some codes in GitHub, but the code was not precise. It was like telling what he's doing in Spark. We did have PySpark integration tests, and I was able to repeat all his tests, and it was passing. And it was like an endless discussion, which led to, hey, but we are using Scala. And I thought, for Spark, if you write your Spark in Scala or Python, it's translated to some data frame, dataset, or Spark SQL API. That shouldn't be a difference, I thought. But it turned out that there is a difference if you map your data sets into some Scala case classes, because then you run out of data frame API, you move into RDD API. And in this case, we are missing some support for some node within the plan. If you're able to reproduce the problem, it's much easier at this time. So the great thing about this was that we added the Scala integration test with this particular job and make sure it's working. Okay, so these were the small issues. It's always easy to be proud about small issues. And what are the big issues ahead? This is something I hope we'll have some short discussion about it. Spark parent application. So currently, OpenLineage event is sent per each Spark action. Up to my understanding, there are here at least two problems. The first one is how to group actions into a single job run. So if I have a Spark application and it reads from many tables and writes to multiple tables, and each such write is called an action. So the action is something that triggers the execution of data processing. How do I know that all those actions are contained within a single application? How can I group them? How can I know if the whole application failed, succeeded, or whatever? And I don't know if any one of you has an opinion on that, or at least an opinion on if the problem is stated correctly. I'm looking to Jens because I thought Mary, because in order, I don't want to ask you for the solution because we can try to tackle the solution, but just to make sure that we understand the problem correctly. Are those two bullets?
That looks very similar to my slide with Christine. So that's what. Yes, that's very similar. Thank you. Yes, that is very similar to what I've been describing a while ago, yeah, during the presentation.
Do we actually want to show on our side one process per action later or a process per application? Okay.
But one run per execution.
Maciej? What do you think about it?
So I would describe the problem from like Airflow perspective, right? You have a DAG, and in the DAG you have multiple tasks that are running, maybe concurrently, maybe not. And in this case, we have one file, one Spark file that I don't know, reads data, writes data, right? If you read a data and then write it to two tables, you get two actions, right? And for most people, I think mental model is that their file, or like notebook is their like job, rather than two multiple jobs per one file. So from OpenLineage perspective, we have a construction that allows us to like group the runs, the jobs, and this is called parent facet. And parent facet allows us for a run to describe like a parent run that spawned this run that we are currently in. So in Airflow, we can think of it like a DAG as a big run that spawns all the tasks inside, right? And for Spark application, we could have something like that, right? What it would be is a further question, right? Because we don't have the explicit knowledge about that, right? If we have an action, we don't know if it's a part of like some larger notebook or something like that. So it's not as well defined as in Airflow, I would say.
Yeah, I'm happy with the confirmation that the definition of problem is the same, because
So we have customers asking they would like to have more explainability on our side of their Spark applications, and by that they mean drilling down in Dataplex into the Spark actions that make up the application. So from our side, it would be useful to have both the application and the actions represented as jobs, and then use the parent run facet, as you said, to link those two together.
I can maybe add one more. I can add you one more thing. I think it's a great case for lineage to be produced by the actual data producers, right? So in Airflow, we have a native integration with Airflow. We kind of have a defined API, and we can like decide that we want to collect this data, shape it in some way. In Spark, we are using the pre-existing interface. That is, I think, very good, but does not allow us to understand things like that. And native integration with Spark would be very helpful, because we could define, we receive an event that some job is running, and then we could have an additional information that is a part of some notebook. We've actually, I think Paweł and I independently tried to know, like, if we are running from some notebook inside this Spark event, is it possible to know that this job is part of some notebook? Or in case of Spark SQL, can we get an original SQL statement that caused this execution? And it seems that it's not possible, or maybe it's possible with some very advanced reflection, but we don't really know where. And yeah, this is another case where I think some native integration would be useful.
yeah, could you handle the microphone too?
I want to say what's my mental model here. Maybe I don't have the full understanding on the Spark details, but in my understanding, we have some template in Dataplex lineage. It's the process, and we have the run, which is the execution of this template. I associate it with like we have an application, give it some parameters. So application is the process. And when you run it with some parameters, you have the run. So run contains those parameters. And ideally, if you have a program, give it the same input, you get the same output, which means if the system like Spark contains the template, like the process, and knows what are the parameters of that process, ideally, you could generate like a fingerprint, a hash, some ID, which could be used as a grouping key. This way, assuming that each run is idempotent, you would have a way of figuring out which events you'll get in the end. I mean, in the end, you want to get events of lineage with input and output. Does it make sense?
I think you've described what we independently did in Airflow, actually, because we also send like 2 events, start and complete there, and we deterministically generate run ID in both of those from like DAG parameters. In Spark, we probably could do that, right? Our other idea is to send like a wrapping event that we receive events on application start and application end from Spark listener. And then we could generate those run IDs and store it. But Paweł, for example, really wants the Spark integration to remain stateless because right now we just receive data, extract some things, send an event, rather than like store some things in memory. Like having it stateless has a lot of advantages, like not possibly causing memory leaks. So yeah, there are ways to achieve some wrapping. The question is what's the best, right? And basically, do we want to commit to some model that we don't fully yet understand maybe in doing it this way? I guess this will be discussed and probably resolved soon. Right.
There's a question from Sherry.
Oh, I'm not able to read it. I don't know how to find it.
Sherry, you want to share your question? You want to unmute yourself and ask?
Sure. It wasn't. It was not a question. It was. I mean, I phrased it as a question. It was more like we have that with things like notebooks, but we also have pipelines, right? So it's like a parent object, a parent facet might be a pipeline kind of situation or a stored procedure, right? So this is something that comes up a lot, is to have that hierarchy.
Yeah, exactly. I think we can describe arbitrary hierarchies using this.
Okay. Anyone more would like to give a thank you, Shiri? Yeah, it's similar to anyone. Any comment more?
One more question. So have you been thinking about the hierarchy outside of a specific system as well? So Composer calling a data proc job, for example, that then triggering some other execution in some other system?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically it works right now if you set it up. So the same way we have like parameter that you can send in Spark config that describes this parent run ID, and then integration sends it. But for Airflow, it works only if you like set it up manually right now. So if you use like data proc operator or EMR operator or anything, you have to pass your custom Spark config and some Airflow macro. And as we are integrated with Airflow, we can probably add some option that you want this config to be set always, right? Then you don't have to modify your DAGs and it will be automatic. And that's the idea. right? And we could probably generalize it into many other systems. I think it would be great if we could do something like that with SQL-based systems, right? Because our input is only a SQL, and the database could potentially also like share lineage. And there's some like, I think, things you can do with Snowflake right now, but you can't like send an parent run ID and use SQL right now. So in general case, it's also a hard problem, right? And that's also why we are doing this standard, working on something open to be able to maybe potentially in the future have this kind of hierarchies everywhere.
Okay. Yeah, that was just one of 3 big issues. The other one is perhaps simpler to discuss. It's just at some point we need to support Scala 2.13. Currently we do support Scala 2.12, and yeah, I think in order to support it, we need to publish 2 artifacts. So yeah, that's some issue that we'll need to tackle. Because I believe that at some point Spark will only support 2.13, and it's going to be more and more users that use the Scala version. And the last slide on this deck is where do we want to go, and it's kind of the strategic goal. So the problem we do have with OpenLineage Spark integration is that we are suffering from multi-dimensional complexity, because we do have multiple Spark versions and the methods and classes differ slightly per Spark version. We want to support, and we do support, Iceberg and Delta as storage providers, and we also want to support different versions of Iceberg and Delta connectors. And actually we want to support different versions of any connectors, like or Spark extensions like the BigQuery or Snowflake. And with such multi-dimensional architecture, this leads to problems and makes it heavier and heavier all the time. And the idea initiated by Julian, even some issue that I don't remember the number, is to, what are we able to move it to other code bases and make it cleaner? And this is the idea I just started working on and would like to work more in the near future. And the general idea is to create some package with just interfaces to be implemented on the Spark extension side, so that we can move the implementation of lineage extraction logic directly to those extensions, and perhaps remove all the dependencies to the third-party extensions. Like, if we're able to generate lineage within Iceberg, in case it is the Iceberg node within the Spark logical plan that's responsible for processing data, that would be a way easier for us. But of course, it's not good to advertise the idea as good for us. I think it also gives great options, great advantages for those extensions, because those extensions in most cases have really great statistics and insights that would be worth putting into the OpenLineage event. For instance, in case of Iceberg, there's an issue with a list of potential interesting statistics that could be put, like the amount of rows written, committed, and so on. And it's like, dozens of such numbers. And so I think it's like the advantages could be on both sides. On us, it would be, the easier way to produce the lineage, because the logic will be directly within the code that's processing the data, and for those extensions, it will be easier to expose anything you think is interesting to OpenLineage model. Yeah, and perhaps later on we could advertise this approach to Spark community. So I don't know, it can be a long way, but I think it's worth going there and discussing it, give it a try, giving it another try, and come up with some good solution at the end. And this is the last slide here. Do we have any questions? And a silly story, Scuba. I'm looking into.
Not this time.
Not this time. Oh, if not, then thank you very much. And yeah.
Hi, can I have one question from the audience? Like,
Yes, please.
like remote audience. Okay, so I noticed recently a fact that I want to gather the events from OpenLineage for my processing, and I play a little bit with Marquez, but do you have some like ready-to-go solution to gather these events, I don't know, back to Iceberg or something like this? Or not yet? Or you don't plan to do it?
What do you mean by back to Iceberg?
So basically, I'm like modifying or processing Iceberg tables using Spark, and it will generate some kind of events in OpenLineage. But then I want to see those events possibly in Spark, right? Because at the end of the day, the events amount will be huge. So I want to have some kind of processing engine to filter out events only I'm interested in or something like this. So maybe not the. You do it by Marquez, right? But
Yeah, I
more
would
thinking
recommend
about
using Marquez and its REST API to filter, to get the whole lineage events, or to ask for the job data sets wherever you want to.
Okay. I was wondering about like the scale. Do you test the Marquez with the big scale? Like, for example, if you have thousands of Spark jobs that reading hundreds of thousands tables, and what will happen then? The REST API seems to be like bottleneck there, but I don't know. Maybe it's worth checking.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Maybe
No,
you
no.
should implement custom transport, send it directly to your database, or have some proxy for that, right? And then query it however you like. OpenLineage client has an option to define custom transport, which allows you to send it wherever you want, right? If you implement the class.
Okay.
Yeah,
And there's an existing transport for Kafka, for example, as well, if you want to send it to Kafka. And Paweł, you built a proxy to send it to multiple destinations. So you can forward to Marquez and to Kafka separately, files, if you want.
We've built a Fluentd proxy that lets you copy the event and send in any location you want. And, it's a Fluentd, so it's a ready out-of-the-box solution. And it allows you to treat OpenLineage events as a casual logs, which can be JSONs as well. And so there's a bunch of Fluentd output. I don't remember if it's processors or output stuff. And one of them was to write it to S3 directly. And I'm pretty sure you can span some SQL on the top of this. But I know that people are having pretty big Marquez instances, but I'm not sure if it's like millions or 100,000 of events. Yeah.
Okay. You can definitely put millions and then even tens of millions of events. Right? So Marquez is backed by a Postgres database, and you can send a lot of events to it before. And Marquez has an option to expire all logs as well.
Okay, cool. Great info. And about this forwarding events to Kafka, it's like already in this version 1.5, or do you mean like we can write the custom one on our own?
You mean like OpenLineage Spark integration? Then the Kafka is for more than a year as a transport option.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. Great question. Wow.
Thank you so much, Paweł. Good update on Spark.